than right now. So, Sarah, take it from here because this is such a valuable thing, and I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot of things.
Thanks, Wendy, and thanks for having me. So I've been traveling for about 25 years almost now as a tour guide, and I've been a tour guide for a long time, a travel journalist. And the thing that I've learned is being light on your feet is probably the most useful thing that I've learned in my travels. I've learned a lot of things. I've met a lot of interesting people. I know Italy inside and out, but I think just as a philosophy, um, th- every time I would take a trip, I would do something a little bit different. I would experiment. I would try to pack just a little bit lighter because, as you know, living in Italy, a lot of the transportation is by train. And hopping on and off trains all the time, especially when I was doing a lot of book research, I'd spend one day and I'd hit 3 or 4 towns and I'd have to have my luggage with me. You can't bring something heavy, and even a rolling bag doesn't really work. So over time, I've just found a lot of tips and tricks for myself to figure out how to lighten my load. And it's a little bit of a funny origin story how I ended up being somebody known as being a packing, I don't know, packing ninja or whatever.
Tracking
I'm,
guru.
I'm actually, yeah, I'm actually an architect. That's where I come from. I started out my life as an architect. And so, of course, I think about things in that way. And how do you make efficiencies? How, because I was into kind of efficient housing design. So how do you make things better and smarter as you go along? And actually, what happened was I was working at Rick Steves, and I had just gotten back from a trip, and I had a huge backpack full of like all kinds of dirty clothes and stuff. And the woman who was supposed to present their packing talk, which was their most popular class, they had 500 people coming to the theater to hear her speak, and she couldn't make it at the last minute. So they called me and they said, "Hey, there's nobody else in town that can do this talk." And I said, "Well, I've never done this talk. I don't know how to do a talk on packing. I usually would do talks about architecture or Italian history." And I said, "Oh, well, I guess I can." And they were just like, "Please, whatever you can do, please just come in and help us out." And I said, "Okay, sure." I said, "I just got home. I have a backpack that's not unpacked yet. I can just bring that, I guess." They said, "Fine, whatever. Just come in. We need somebody to present this talk." So I walked into the theater, and it was just the funniest thing because I wasn't even sure what to talk about. And I just plopped my backpack onto a table in front of this big audience. And I just said, "Look, I've never done this talk before." And I'm going to be really honest with you that this is just the way I do things. It may not suit you, but there may be things in my philosophy about packing that will help you to kind of develop your own personal philosophy, because that's kind of what it's all about. Everybody's going to have their own approach and needs. I don't have the same needs as somebody who's maybe in their 70s. I don't have the same needs as a man. I don't have the same needs as a child. So it's different. So I just started unpacking, pulling things out of my bag. And what I realized as I was talking is I really do have a strategy, and my strategy is weight. That's what it is. So ever since then, that talk was so popular that they asked me to come back again and again and again, and I did a video series on it, talking about kind of the key ideas behind how I pack my bag, and it just became wildly popular. It was their most popular video on YouTube. And it's essentially what kind of helped me launch my blog, because they got so many people asking questions about packing that they were sending me emails all the time. And I was like, I'm tired of answering these emails. I'm going to start a website with a blog, and I'm going to put the answers to all those questions onto the blog. So that's how I started my company, of all things.
It's true. And as it's turned out over time, weight is so key because it costs so much money if you go overweight. I mean, even for the slightest thing, and they seem to be, tightening and tightening, you can't take anything on board. So, focusing with weight as your number one part of your strategy makes so much sense. And you, Sarah, from what I read on your website, you actually weigh each item and then kind of plan your packing from there to get up to what you feel is a comfortable weight to carry around the pack. Tell us about that.
Well, I always think it's interesting when people say to me, "Well, what should I take? I'm going to Japan next week. What should I take?" And, I can't tell you how many pairs of pants you need. You might need 6 pairs of pants, but 2 shirts. I don't know. Everybody's got a different way that they dress. I'm very messy. I drop things on my shirts all the time. I need more shirts because am likely to have spaghetti bolognese all over the front of my shirt, right? So we all have different needs about what we actually need in our bag. But the one consistent thing is, yeah, there's a weight limit. And so my thought is always, you know what? Don't I'm not going to tell you packing light is take 2 shirts and 2 pairs of pants. Packing light is, does your bag weigh less than 16 pounds? And that's typically what most airlines require for international carry-on is 16 pounds. I think it's 8 kilos, something like that. So I always kind of pin that in my mind. I want my bag around 15 to 16 pounds. What you put in there with that 15 to 16 pounds is up to you. And if you're smart, you can put a lot into a bag. And actually, I got to a point when I had more time before I was running my own company that I was even going to fabric stores and I was looking for the lightest possible fabric. And I was making myself dresses and shirts and things that I couldn't purchase because you can't purchase things sometimes that are light. And I always laughed because so many of these travel clothing companies will put out these no wrinkle kind of outfits, but they weigh so much. You could put maybe 2 in and you're already at your 15 pounds. So it's that key number. That's the first question people need to ask themselves. What airline am I on and what is their limitation? Typically, it's going to be about 15 to 16 pounds for a carry on. And the reason that I say carry on, and I know there's a lot of debate right now about whether or not carrying a bag on is a good thing or not. Carrying a bag on in international travel, I think is critical because if you get to your destination and you don't have your bag, it's a disaster in the sense that it's a distraction. And I know because I've dealt with this for 25 years with guests who arrive who didn't listen and checked a bag, and then they get to the other side and it's not there. And then I've seen guests spend the entire trip trying to get their bag back. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a time sink, right? It steals your time. It's not just that you don't have your stuff, which that's not a good feeling, but also you're spending all of your time trying to resolve that issue. And I hate to see people do that. So I always just say, on the way over, pack as light as you possibly can. When you get there, who cares? Buy as much as you want, like fill that suitcase to the brim and check it on the way home because at home, who cares? Your bag will make it back eventually. It may take time, but it's fine. So that's why I always say carry on the way over and then you can check on the way back. So that's why that 15 pounds is key. But then it also depends, what are you doing on your trip? Because as I said, like I'm going to Japan this week and we're going to be on trains mostly. We're going to be on the Shinkansen all the time. I'm going to pack the lightest possible backpack because we're hopping on and off the trains all the time. And I don't want to be wrangling a really heavy suitcase, especially a wheeled suitcase. I know not everybody can do backpacks, but I prefer a backpack because I'm light on my feet. I can jump on and off of trains. So that's why this weight issue is what I kept coming back to in all of the times that I was packing for my own personal travels, is that's the key piece because the airlines require it to be a certain weight. The bag needs to be a certain dimension. So the more compact you can be and the lighter you can be, the more things you can bring. And I mean, I've tried all kinds of things, believe me, all kinds of different experiments. My latest crazy experiment is this. Do you really need your toiletries bag? Because that's the heaviest thing in your suitcase. Do you really need to bring it at all? Because I found in any country I can think of, even Cambodia, even, Zimbabwe, when I've gone to really exotic places, as soon as you get there, there's even at the airport, a drugstore where you can buy shampoo and toothpaste and all the things that you think you really need. I don't know of a country on earth that I've been to yet, maybe Antarctica, that doesn't have a 7-Eleven nearby that can sell you those things.
Well,
So,
and not only when you get to hotels, they normally have, now they have like this, body wash and the shampoo, and you kind of have everything anyhow. And they have hair dryers. And so,
yep.
and then,
It's
worst
accurate.
case, you go to a drugstore or a pharmacy and get things. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I love going. I mean, as you know, in Italy, I love going to the farmacia, and I get like the local toothpaste, which they have some really interesting ones, and they have some really nice shampoos. I love the spray pump deodorants. You can't get those in the U.S. So, in a lot of ways, for Italy, I don't bother bringing anything other than like my favorite makeup that I can't get there, or whatever things that I think are important, and my medications and that sort of thing. But that's kind of an interesting thing. You can't. I feel like packing has a lot of opportunity to think broadly and think differently. Another packing tip I give people for Southeast Asia is if you're going to Asia, or if you're going to Vietnam or to Thailand, it's incredibly inexpensive to have clothes custom made there. So I
I
always tell
know, it's amazing.
it is.